but we definitely have our friends from Edmonton here. And I want to welcome everyone. This is really the third part of a series of conversations that we locally here in Wisconsin have had with our friends in Edmonton who have been experimenting with and really successfully, it sounds like, implementing this block connecting process that is spreading through the entire city of Edmonton of more than 1 million people, block by block by block. We'd had a great overview of block connecting, and there are some resources out there. If you haven't had a chance to sort of get the overview, let me know, write to me in the chat, and I'll send you a link. We had a conversation with Howard Lawrence, who's here, who was the founder and brain of the initiative, and is still leading that initiative. Talked to us about kind of the sort of institutional structure of block connecting, the block connecting initiative. And what we're going to do today is talk about kind of more the nitty gritty of block connecting. I don't know, Vicki, if you'd like to share a little bit of your experience and kind of why you wanted to have this call.
Yeah, so just like Julie said, we had a few previous ones, and I myself am part of my neighborhood, and so I'm a neighborhood connector. And really from the onset of that position that I took, working with Julie, I really wanted to find some people in my neighborhood so that we could be better connected at a block level versus a neighborhood level. So I'm really happy that a couple of our neighbors in my neighborhood, we have Melissa Chi, and we have Chris Evenson and Dawn here from the my Menasha neighborhood, who are interested in learning a lot more about the block connecting from all you experts in Canada, because we really would like to get this going in our neighborhood. And we're going to start, we have 2 other, Melissa's husband is interested, and then we have 1 other neighbor. So I have 3 blocks that I'm hopeful that we can start doing the block connecting. So
wonderful.
So could we hear just briefly from sort of everyone, just sort of say hello, sort of where you are, and you know, what your interest is in being here today. Patrick, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Patrick Casey, Historic Central Neighborhood, Appleton, Wisconsin, and I was connected to the neighborhood through Julie also, and I invited James Bacon to join us. So if James wants to introduce himself and give us a little background what he's up to, he's in my neighborhood also.
He's on the phone.
Not now.
He's on the phone, and he is at work, so he may not be able to be with us at all times. But James is in my neighborhood. You already heard a little bit about him, and they're very active in the neighborhood. He and his wife, Abe. Why can't I remember? Brianne. I'm sorry, James. Brianne. So I don't see anyone else from my neighborhood, but I do see Andrew from my neighborhood neighbor. He's in a neighborhood next to ours. Andrew, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Yep, I'm in the neighborhood next to south of Julie and east of Patrick, and Lawrence City Park neighborhood in kind of downtown Appleton, Wisconsin. And yeah, I guess just my interest is just learning about more techniques to reach out, engage with the neighborhood. I'm kind of particularly interested, is probably a little off topic, but I'm also very interested in the whole just trying to create additional service opportunities for people, trying to connect people that are looking for jobs and wanting to stay employed in the neighborhood with people who need help in the neighborhood. So that's another interest or topic of mine. So thanks for the invite.
Love your picture, Andrew. Just saying, as a Canadian.
Patrick, here again, I see another one of my neighbors, Ann Bremer, just joined. If she wants to introduce herself.
You're muted, Anne.
You caught me finishing my lunch. I'm Ann Bremer. I'm in the historic central neighborhood of Appleton, Wisconsin with Patrick and not far from Julie. And I'm interested to hear what others have to say about this topic. I just found out about it today. Thank you.
Beth?
Yeah, hi, I am Beth Flaherty, and I actually live in the Alicia Park neighborhood of Appleton, but I just flew into New York City today. You can see I came to visit a couple daughters I haven't spent enough time with lately, so I'm here for a couple weeks. But I am chair of the Imagine Fox, one of the chairs of the Imagine Fox Cities Visioning Initiative in Appleton. And we got a very strong statement from the community that belonging and social connectedness is a top priority. So I've been joining Julie on some of these calls to determine how Imagine Fox Cities fits into this. And I just love learning about what you're all doing. Thanks.
Lori?
I'm Lori Wagner. I'm the Denmark Community Connector for Neighborhood Partners. Denmark is just about 15 minutes south of Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm here today because I'm interested in learning how to create a group in my community who could then go out and start connecting in neighborhoods. We've seen a lot of economic growth in our community in the recent years, but we feel that we need more community building as far as people. So that's what I'm here to learn about.
Right. Jerry?
Hi, I'm Jerry Lambie, and I am in Appleton, Wisconsin, West Appleton neighborhood. And I just registered the neighborhood of June of 19. So we're kind of just getting started on building the neighborhood and information gathering. And I'm just really interested in having the opportunity to be able to connect with all of my neighbors. Our neighborhood is actually 1,800 households. So we're trying to do the best we can to reach everyone and to help everyone as much as we can, because we all love where we live, right? So we want to make everybody feel that way.
Thanks, Jerry. Michael?
My name is Michael Munson. I am a little bit different than everyone here insofar that I have a mobile app that is dedicated to people helping each other, making it easy and rewarding for people to help each other while protecting privacy. And I am here at the, I guess at the invite of Jerry. She turned me on to the Abundant Community Edmonton about 3 weeks ago, and since then I've been kind of drinking from a fire hose, learning about it, and really enthused about what is going on there, how it aligns with everything that I've been doing and trying to build, and looking forward to finding where it fit in.
Thank you. Thanks. Let's see. Melissa, Chris and Dawn and Melissa, Vicki kind of introduced you, but I would love for you to say hi.
Hi. We're just Vicki's foot soldiers.
Glad to be here and get some knowledge. We're looking for what we can do to help. More knowledge.
Yep.
I'm Melissa. My husband is Kenny. He's at work right now, but I'm interested in learning more about what you guys do. I've heard a lot of great things about what's going on in Edmonton, and it would be really cool if we can kind of do something similar here in Wisconsin, and just getting to know more neighbors. Like Vicky's on my street, so that's how I connected with her. And like I know my immediate neighbors, but I don't know all my neighbors on my street. So I'd love to get to know more people. And I mean, I already consider it to be a safe neighborhood, but I think I like the vision of keeping it that way.
Thank you. And James, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Sorry about that. So I'm James Bacon. I work in education technology with schools. And so I had a school that had just called and said that they were not able to access our site for some reason. So anyway, had to respond. But Patrick invited me. I live in the historic central neighborhood here in Appleton. Just really like this kind of stuff. I started the Buy Nothing group because I really like the sense of community. I like to get to know people. I think strong neighborhoods make strong communities. I'm really into the Small Towns podcast, which I think has even like featured Edmonton and at least a couple other places in Canada a couple times with some of the neat stuff happening there. So when Patrick offered the chance to join the call, I tried to move my schedule around, so I might have to leave a little early, but thanks for letting me be here.
Right. Okay, that's so great. It's fun for me to see all of you in one place. So we have Howard and Penny and Karen here from Edmonton, and I would give you all a chance to introduce yourselves as well. And as you're doing that, we want to get into a kind of detailed discussion and sort of explanation of the block connecting process, like really the nitty gritty sort of at the door. How do those conversations go? And I want you to consider whether you feel a reenactment would be a useful way to begin this conversation, or I have the connector card, which I can put up on the screen, and we could just kind of talk through the conversation. So just the three of you really just think about that, what you think would be most useful. But if you could just sort of introduce yourselves first, that would be great.
So I'm Penny Tucker, and I'm from Windsor Park, Edmonton. And thank you for having me here today. I'm happy to participate and learn from you as well. And I think it would be great to do a role play with Howard in front of you, so that because he and I are old role players from way back when it comes to this stuff. That might be a suggestion.
They're very good at it too.
I don't
if I get involved, I'll be a grumpy neighbor. So
I know you don't like to role play.
I don't mind, but you're better. I'm Karen Wilk, also in Edmonton, in a neighborhood called Laurier Heights, an older established community. We've lived here for, like 20-something years, and been on this connecting with our block and our hood in lots of different ways, and really enjoying and appreciating being community. As one of my neighbors says, I now know that my home is bigger than my house, and that's just what we all feel.
That's great, thanks. So yeah, it's wonderful to be on the call. My name is Howard Lawrence, and I am co-founder. It's important. So it's fun to know that co-founder of Abundant Community Edmonton, which started Abundant Community Initiative. And of course, John and Peter wrote the book, The Abundant Community, which is a must read. And I'm hoping that you've read it. It's so helpful. And there's even chapters, or a chapter on this very thing, how to find a friend on the block and then walk the neighborhood with them. And really it was out of that people like Karen in particular, but there was many other people in Edmonton like yourselves who were already doing this connecting piece that felt like they were missing something if they weren't connecting with their neighbors, and so they just started. And so we gathered that community of practice together, which it sounds like you almost are, a community of practitioners who then discussed what worked best, And so that was the foundation of this. And then others like Julie, spent time for years with Julie, hearing her input around what was happening in Appleton and others from around North America. So we've just been the repository of stories and practices against the backdrop of the academic and the technical and the work of ABCD over the years. So yeah, it's great to be here. For me, it really is about, selfishly, about having a great block and a great neighborhood. And so we look forward to sharing how we, by hook and by crook, made this happen. And I say by hook and by crook because there obviously, you know, there's no formula. But what there is a compelling why. Like, why for kids? Why for seniors? Why for loneliness? Why for the economy? Why for fitness? Why for, there are so many compelling whys as to, let's connect up at the block level and then expand it to our neighborhoods. So, you know, we're going to, with that backdrop of the why, that I think all of you have your own particular reasons why you're either, you know, creating Buy Nothing, you mentioned it, James, or Michael, why you're creating an app, or all of us, why we're actually going to do this crazy thing of go out and meet our neighbors in some way. Those whys will always compel us. And as we did last session, we kind of reviewed some of that so that we knew that by hook or by crook, we were going to make this happen. So it's that determination and passion that will you know, drive it where we are. So I don't know what our process is. I think certainly it's fun to do a role play, but we could tell some stories of connecting our blocks and how that's gone, you know, so far. So, and that doesn't need to be, I know Penny and Karen are awesome at having connected both their blocks, and that's really what we want to talk about. They also have connected up their neighborhoods. So there's two conversations here. One, how to connect up your neighborhood. The other is how to connect your block. Today is about that grassroots, that fundamental unit, that golden nugget of a connected block. So why don't we start with just some stories of how we've connected up our block. So to be clear, a block is contiguous, right? We're not leaving anybody else out. It's approximately 20 neighbors. We could talk about why 20 too, but 20 neighbors. So how have you connected up the approximate 20 neighbors on your block? So why don't we start with the story?
Well,
and I know,
Howard, if I can jump in, because
absolutely,
because we only have so much time, and I really want to make sure. I think people on this call who asked for this call really wanted that sort of nitty gritty at the door. How does the conversation go? So I want to make sure that we do that. I mean, I totally understand, like, wanting to hear the stories, but we did hear a lot of stories in the first call.
Sounds good, Julie.
But you can decide. I mean, if you, like, people have like specific nitty gritty questions that I want to make sure that we can get to. So,
okay.
Honestly, if you wouldn't mind doing, I could pull up the connector card so people can kind of see that.
Sure.
Let's just show the kind of framework, and maybe you can explain a little bit about that. And if you wouldn't mind doing a little reenactment.
Role play. Okay. So while you're doing that, let me just say that this connector card is a guide that can be followed loosely by the block connector. And we created it out of the many inventories that ABCD has had over the years. We created this for the any neighborhood, and it has a hope of connecting people socially. Before we get to the third question, let's flip to the other side, Julie, to that third question of skills, abilities, or experiences that you would share with neighbors. All right, so I want to say on your block, you probably know some people already. You might know your next door neighbors. Generally, people do. And so you would want to maybe talk to them about this idea. Now, the source of the idea is always interesting. So we give people a source for this idea. So you can see up in the top right-hand corner, it's Abundant Community Edmonton. So people see that the municipality has something to do with this. On the back side of the card, there's some other logos as well. Julie, if you want to flip over to that side, you can see that there again, Edmonton, and also our neighborhood leadership, that community league spirit. In Edmonton, people know that the community leagues are representing neighborhood leadership. So when we come to the door, we have the comfort of having the legitimacy of the city and the neighborhood. So those help people take this task on. So on the other, and while we're on this side, okay. While we're on this side, you can see that there's a purpose statement from the city of Edmonton. A caring, connected city starts with a caring, connected and caring neighborhood. So gives you the framework and you're going, okay, this is bigger than us. We can do this. There's even a video you can watch if you really want to know the details of it. So we put all that onto this card to give probably as much as anything the block connector confidence. And here's what we hear a lot, permission, believe it or not, to go talk to their neighbors. It gives them a reason. So that's the backdrop of this, because people are a bit nervous, not with their direct neighbors that they know, but further down the block. So you might want to go to the neighbor that you know and say, you know, someone, the neighborhood connector, somebody in the neighborhood's asked if I'd be the block connector, and we're showing it to my neighbor and I'm saying, what do you think of this? And well, it seems reasonable to me. Now I'm having a conversation, a dialogue myself, and the person says, well, isn't this kind of the way it used to be anyways? Yeah, but we should go meet our neighbors and see if we can create a bit of a contact list or connect up our block. And they would say, okay. And then you say, well, do you want to go let's go, like I know the next door neighbor a little bit, let's go talk to them. So you then go out onto the block and really, you're going to see who's out and about. Like, is there anybody out and about? There's no point in knocking on a door if there's somebody weeding their garden or shoveling their walk. That's snow, which I guess in Wisconsin you have snow. So shoveling your walk. So this can happen in any season. Or mowing their lawn. And most times people want to stop whatever they're doing anyways because they don't want to do the work. So you can strike up a conversation with them. Now on the other side, we actually give a bit of a script. So this card, which has a tearaway in the center, between the white and the blue, that's a tearaway. We actually give the neighbor a bit of a script. Now, obviously, if you're walking up to somebody that's been mowing the lawn and they see you want to talk, they're going to shut their lawnmower off and you're going to say to them, hi, you know, and it'll probably be something like this, right? I've seen you around. I've lived on the block for a number of years, but we've never met. And our neighborhood is doing this neighborly initiative, right? You want to get, that's all you're going to say. And then you're going to put your hand out, or I guess in COVID times, you're going to keep 2 meters away and you're going to say, hey, my name is Howard and I live, see the script? So I've established that I'm a neighbor, critical, you're not selling anything, I'm a neighbor. My name is Howard and I live down the street at 112 and I have the red car out front. And then breathe and let them say something, right? It's important that this is a dialogue. And then people are going to go, oh yeah, you're the people that just renovated your back something. Yeah, that's right, exactly. Well, it's crazy that we haven't met each other, but I'd like to, because our neighborhood's doing this neighborly thing and I said I would help to connect up our block, I wanted to give you my email and my phone number. And you see down the left-hand side, we're walking through this card. So I'm going to go to the next thing and I'm going to give them this white sheet, this little white tag of the card. Then I'm going to say, here's my phone number. And I'm going to say, you know, if there's anything, like if you have ideas about what we can do on the block or how you might want to, you know, create a better living, or if my garage door is open or somebody's garage door is open, you know, we can be in touch. So you establish that kind of vulnerable connection. And they're going, whoa, you're giving me your email and your phone number. Well, the reality is they live next door. So, you know, if they wanted to do harm, they would just come over and do harm. So obviously that's not going to happen. So that's getting that point person role. There's a role that we would call the point person. I'm just introducing myself and establishing myself as the hub on the block that's initiating this thing. Then the next thing I'm going to say, and I've already made a plan in my mind for this as the block connector. Next thing I'm going to say is, Hey, our blocks next, we're going to have a bit of a social distance social. So we didn't have that language when this card was printed, but we would say a social distance social out on our sidewalk. And here, folks, and it's what day is it today? It's Wednesday or Thursday, and we're going to have it actually on Friday, tomorrow night. You don't have to wait. You're going to say, we're going to have this little gathering, social distance social on the sidewalk. And, we're not even going to have food because of COVID, but we just want to meet each other. And if you want to bring your lawn chair, we can do that. We'll just keep you separated. And that's, like next Friday. So actually, if I can get your phone number and email, that would be great. I'm going to tear that off. I'm going to give the little white piece to them. And then I'm going to keep the other part, and I'm going to put on the other side, Julie, I'm going to write their phone number and email down and their name and everybody on the block. They're going to write down their name and stuff. And you're just going to have a nice chat while this is all happening. And maybe some of the family members are going to come out and you're going to meet them. And then you're going to say, okay, well, I'll be in touch then around our block social next Friday night, our social distance social on Friday night or Saturday night. Okay, I'm going to let my colleagues in this, feel free to ask questions, and I'm going to let my colleagues comment as well here. I've kind of dominated this first little chunk.
I think that was a great introduction and overview of how to approach, like the nitty-gritty of approaching someone. It is a little different in COVID because normally, we would knock on the door and maybe even be invited in often. So I think in COVID, you could even be wearing a mask at the door. You could step way back so that if they look out the window, they see that they're safe, so that they will open the door. And and Howard always says to do the neighborly friendly knock at the door, which is the ... and it's a little more friendly than just a doorbell ring. It's just a subliminal kind of a signal. And I have found, I think in my experience so far, that it doesn't have to be a long conversation. In fact, reading people, I think, is part of a block connector's job. So, so sometimes I would just sort of say, hey, do you have a moment? I just have a couple of questions here to, and often if they didn't understand what I was talking about, I would just say, we want to kind of create that sense of a village on our block, like the old days when people used to know that gentleman over there needed help shoveling. And now we're so distanced from each other. We're so disconnected from each other that it's nice if we can create a contact list and have some kind of connectivity. So that's kind of moving into the questions. I would just say, we have a few questions that we're asking everybody and we're going to collate it and try to fan the information back out to people in an anonymous way. And, most of the questions revolve around trying to find people who have common interests so that they can find each other on a block, or they can get together from the neighborhood, from other parts of the neighborhood, because somebody who likes to golf over there may not know that there's a golf buddy just over there. So that I often found explaining that aspect of why we were interested in interest was pretty important. And then also the abilities question. People never think they have skills. So rewording it in a way that says, what are you passionate about? What kinds of things do you like to do in your spare time? And it did take a bit of probing on that question because people are so modest.
That's Canadians are modest, Penny, so we don't have to worry about this group.
Humble. So, I mean, that
Just kidding.
The first question, what is your vision for our neighborhood? I would say 95% of people got stumped on that at first. And so it did, what I kind of wrote out a little bit of a script and for my block connectors. And it was basically just to probe a little bit and say, what would you like to see more of in our neighborhood? Like they'll often go, you say, what is your vision for the neighborhood? And they'll go, oh, I've never thought about that. Or I don't know what you mean by that. So I would just say things, and I'm sure my colleagues have things to add to this, but I would say things like what do you like about our neighborhood? What's bugging you? What would be the dream state or the utopia for how you would like to see things operating around here and people interacting with each other? And I'd say 9.9 times out of 10, we would have a better response once you probed like that. People would definitely get to some kind of meaningful answer.
What would a meaningful answer be?
Something like, well, what I mean by meaningful is more so than just saying, oh, I don't like it when they park on front of my house. Like, you know, to me, I guess it's a conversation starter for the neighborhood leadership, but it's not really, I guess meaningful to me would be something like, I really wish I knew my neighbors more, or I wish we had more classes where we could get together and talk about things, or a book club, or a place for people to share their ideas about things. I think that the fact that vision is in that question opens it up to a little bit of a deeper discussion.
Karen?
So Penny, I just want to quickly ask, sorry. So when you decided, or Howard, you know, when you decided to make this question number one, you know, what were you thinking? Like, what is the goal? I mean, it sounded like from what you were saying, Penny, it's about getting right into what people might want to do together, but can you give a little of the background on that question?
Yeah, so the background is, first off, we're saying this is your neighborhood and you have a stake in it. So that's really what we're trying to say. This is yours, and we're here to open the possibilities up to you. And even if you didn't have an answer, that statement is a very positive statement. Another thing that it's really good at, it's a bit, okay, I'll be frank. If you're sitting around with a group of curmudgeons, this is the invitation for them to rant. It's a little bit like Penny led with, well, we should have some parking, which, you know, if you're at the door and you're a little bit apprehensive about the curmudgeon because you know him down the street that's always complaining about stuff, this is a perfect question, because it's saying, well, tell us what you think we should be doing around this neighborhood. Well, the kids should be quieter, right? You can think of the worst curmudgeonly response in the world. And it's actually awesome to begin to work with it, because this is your neighborhood. And well, what do you think we should do? How could we operate in this neighborhood in a meaningful way? And so we're just placing the responsibility for our neighborhood back into their hands. And then, like Penny says, we can coax some really positive stuff out. And frankly, and Michael, a lot of the answers to this would be, I would say today, people will, a high percentage will say safety. I want the neighborhood to be safe, because the media is making every neighborhood feel unsafe. So they'll want it safe, which is actually a great in for us, because we can say, well, knowing our neighbors is shown to be the way that we can discover the most safety and security in our neighborhoods. We can coach our block connectors in that space, but they know that to be true. Others are, we want more retail. We'd like retail closer to this neighborhood. I wish transit were better. Lots, like Penny said, you know, people say, because you're standing there talking neighborly, that's a prompt for them to say, wow, I wish it was more neighborly. Or they might, because you're there, they might actually say, well, I wish we could have some more block socials. So there, you are their prompt, and you can prompt them along. But this information, to be fair, and I just have to back up a little bit, and Karen is a community league president. So I say that to say, because to be fair, if you're going to ask these questions, they have to go somewhere meaningful. Somebody has to do something about these questions. And so you have to have some sense of, or provide the block connectors with some sense of where this material is going to go to, ideally, and this is something that we have built into Edmonton, neighborhood leadership. So the dream would be for this particular question for, can you imagine Mr. Curmudgeon down the street from me, reading in our neighborhood newsletter that this neighborhood needs to have quieter children, you know? He's going, hey, I said that. And they listened to me. And as a result, we're starting a youth group led by the 20-somethings and fed by the old people. This is going to be awesome. So they need to see themselves in the Community League newsletter responding to these questions. Otherwise, you'll never get a second chance if you don't actually have this going somewhere.
And it can also get fed back at the block level.
Absolutely.
I think we talked about this a little bit. If you don't have formal leadership groups, your block, your block connector can come up with all the answers on here and share them in an anonymous way with your block members. I had one colleague who did that in her back alley at a back alley party. She had a social distance back there and she put all the answers to the cards on sheets of paper and hung them up on the fence in the back alley, and everybody could see what everyone else was interested in and what their visions were. So even if you don't get to the formal point of being able to get it into a newsletter or get it onto a database, it can still be shared.
It's great, Penny.
One thing I was going to say too, any information you get on this card, it doesn't always fall into these categories. There's a section on the back at the bottom called comments. And quite often I would have somebody say something and I'd quickly turn it over and write it down. My husband just went through chemo, or, I'm a physicist and I wish there were more physicists to talk to. I don't know. It just, some oddities that have a place to go in that comment section there. It's really nice to capture that there, as well as capturing who the heck it is you're talking to in the household. Are you talking to the wife? Are you talking to the child? Is it the grandmother? Is it the husband?
That's good. Karen, thoughts?
Well, I would echo all of this, and I think I hope you're hearing in it that the idea is to have a conversation and not to be like an interview, so to speak. So you're sharing alongside, listening to them, and basically you're trying to get to know your neighbor, and this is a framework for that. And I'm curious about your context, because I'm not sure you have the neighborhood structures in the same way that we do to fall back on. With the block connectors in my neighborhood, especially in COVID, we're now talking about kind of 3 places where we can start the conversations, and sometimes it's with the card and sometimes it's not. And that's one is just outside of our home. So we're, especially in COVID, encouraging block connectors to just be out front and available, set up your lawn chairs, because tons of people are walking, biking, tricycling, etc., skateboarding outside right now anyway, as long as the weather's good. And so it's easy to say, hey, how are you doing? Which house are you in? And you get a conversation going. And then obviously on the block, yourself walking around and connecting, because people are out and about, as Howard was saying, seeing a person who's gardening and stopping and introducing yourself and initiating the conversation. And then we've been working on like that, the bigger piece beyond the block, which is not so much the conversation right now, making sure that block connectors are present and engaging and a part of all of the socially distanced events that are happening in the community, and even online ones like the Buy Nothing and the, hey everybody, did you know there were block connectors, and using Nextdoor app, starting a Facebook page for the Kindness Rocks movement, just more and more places where neighbors are meeting each other and taking it the next step with our block connectors to get to know one another, not just post that I have milk to give away, but take the next step in nurturing that relationship finding out these kinds of things.
Yeah, and with these cards, I noticed it several times how important it was to follow the lead of where the person takes the conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, even though I have a guideline here, I don't use it as too structured or too formal, because like I think I told the story to the other group the other day about the lady who said, oh, I don't have any skills, and she was a music teacher, and I said, would you like to share your music skills? And she said, oh no, I'm really tired of that. And then by the end of the conversation, when I said to her, oh, you know, what have you been up to and what are you passionate about? She pulled out this beautiful blouse that she had sewn. And it was like, you sew, that's a great talent. You know, is it okay if I put that down as a skill that you wouldn't mind sharing with others? And then that fast forward to COVID, when we had an ICU doc who needed their name embroidered on their scrub, and we connected them. So that's, you know, it's important to read the person that you're talking to and try to tease out what they're passionate about, and that'll take you to the skills and abilities question quite well, I think.
That's great.
Follow their passion.
One of the things that things that we're innovating in this, so this is many years down the road, is we find that block connectors suffer with guilt, right? They feel guilty that they don't do enough. Because the role, while this card kind of has a sense that there's an event taking place of meeting your neighbors, which it kind of can be an event over the first maybe couple of weeks of being a block connector, and then maybe the neighborhood connector is helping you do this. This is a long-term relationship. So you're going to see these people, and you might get the name the first time. You might let them know where you live the second time. Like, it's an evolving relationship over time. So what we have said to kind of counter the notion, the feeling of guilt that block connectors have, because there's not a ton to do. So we have an overarching sense that your role is to assume a posture of neighborliness on your block. So you assume that role, that posture on your block. So now you're just looking for opportunities to connect because you have this posture. And we say that because it's striking how many people, for them, the change of posture is significant. That's what they notice when they become a block connector. They go, you know, I've walked by my neighbors all my life. I never even thought about them. And now that I'm a block connector, they don't say it, but I have a posture toward them. I'm looking for opportunities when they walk out of the house. I'm willing to take a second as I'm driving down the back alley to roll my window down and say hi. So it's this posture. And then, you know, from that posture, we might just communicate that your primary role is to create a neighborly vibe on your block. Just be neighborly. So if what comes naturally to you is to say hi or to bake cookies or to whatever comes to you, just be doing that. And that's particularly helpful after they've gone through the card and have done what they do. Now you're just saying to them, well, just keep that ball rolling by creating a kindness and a neighborliness on the block, so that they never have to feel guilty unless they don't have that posture and aren't connected or aren't creating a neighborly vibe.
And
so Alyssa has a question if you want to just look at the chat.
Yeah, we see that. Great, thank you, Patrick. So we'll look at that question in 2 seconds. So just anything to this point, and then we're going to get to Melissa's question.
I did have an experience where I was my block connector and on my block, and eventually after I extended myself or put a posture of friendliness toward my neighbors, one of my neighbors called me up about 4 months in and said, hey, we haven't gotten together recently. When's the next one? And that was my opportunity to say to her, how about soon? And would you like to host it?
That's great.
So that helped get, and then we've had 4 or 5 people host all over our block, which is I think for me, the utopia is getting other people to have ownership over that role. So, but that started with what Howard said, which was showing a posture of neighborliness.
So the vibe is contagious. It really is.
So, and I had one block connector who baked cookies and put a little note saying, hi, her name, and I'm your block connector, and I'd love to meet you. And she, you know, beautiful little note, ribbons, and put those at everybody's door on her block to introduce herself. And she had great response because she gave them contact info, and then that invited people, gave people the opportunity to connect with her too.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Lots of times we find block connectors will start with, they want to, and at least, yeah, I think I can universalize this. They dither in wanting to get started, so they feel they need to send out a little introductory letter. So they'll stick that in people's mailboxes, just increases their comfort to say hi. They might even get kind of formal and say, I'm the block connector on our block. And, you know, again, it's by hook and by crook and whatever makes you feel comfortable. So let's shift then over to Melissa's question. So Melissa's wondering about the 20 neighbors. How did we determine where, so two questions. How do we, 20? And then how do you determine where the block line is? Yeah, the first one is a little bit easy. We say approximately 20. And I think what we found is generally 20 is enough. Like, if we have 1 in 5 individuals in our society that struggle with mental illness, 1 in 5 with addictions, 1 in 3 lonely, a block of 20 is lots to kind of pull us together and deal with issues together. I don't think it's overwhelming for the block connector generally to have just 20. Co-housing, I think, has approximately 20. So it's a bit arbitrary, and we've seen people shift to 10 when it makes natural sense that they just look after 10. I know Penny has some stories where people, they have the 20 and they go, I want to take that other block too. And then we would say, well, no, absolutely. But then, like Penny just explained, other people on her block are already stepping up to be co-block connectors, let's call them. So if you included another block, another 20 people from another block adjacent to you, inevitably someone would step up and take that responsibility over there as well. So that, and then in a high density, so in a building, we've found that sometimes there will become a building connector for the 40 suites or 50 suites, and then they'll have other people that help them in the building. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's kind of this is approximately how many. And then in terms of determining the number, do you want to answer that, Karen? Or well, comment to either of those questions, Karen or Penny?
Well, I was just going to add that I always let my block connectors have a real strong say in what they felt was their natural block. And then I tried to build the neighborhood around that. Yeah. Instead of saying, you know, here's what makes sense to me, you know, because they have different definitions of some of the curves or the alleyways or the stoppages. And sometimes they have friends that are extending past that they'd like to bring in and things like that. So,
Penny, can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
How many neighborhood connectors are in your community, and how many block connectors work under you?
So we have a small neighborhood of about 500 households, and I am the sole neighborhood connector, and we have about 30 block connectors.
So let's put that to Karen too. Karen?
Well, the goal is to have one for every 20 or so homes for sure. Ours certainly goes up and down, and some are more engaged or conscientious, however you want to describe that, than others are. And our lines are definitely fluid as well in terms of what a block looks like. And sometimes we have people who don't want to do it alone, so they partner up with another person that might be a little bit farther over, so that makes a different shape to the block, so to speak. I don't know if that helps. We also have lanes here, and in some cases the block is actually off the lane because people are connecting in the lane because that's where they park, that's where they take their garbage out, more than they are on the street.
And it has to be said too that things firm up as block connectors start to, I'm not going to say claim, but establish their block. Then by definition, somebody else can't do that. And if they insist or are on that block, then they become co-block connectors.
Yeah.
So no one like goes out and tags properties as a block connector. Or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard Penny does.
Vicky had a question, and I wonder, Vicky, do you want to kind of jump in and just ask it?
Yeah, so I know that Howard was talking about that curmudgeon neighbor, and I agree with him that yes, we can learn a lot from somebody letting us know, or kind of complaining about the neighborhood. We can find out what they're really passionate about, what they really care about. But how can we direct the conversation back to the question that we were originally talking about?
One question that I almost always ask at some point is, so how long have you lived here? And then that naturally leads to, so what have you really appreciated about the neighborhood? So switching it to the positive side. Oh, I used to be best friends with that person down there. My kids used to play out front with the other neighbors. And that just becomes a way into refocusing their thinking and responding to you.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
I have to say, I use that as an example of why we use that first question. And of course, some of that's to comfort the block connector in doing the block connector role. I'm just trying to think, generally speaking, like 99% of the time, it's a very positive conversation. I don't know that I remember one old curmudgeon, he said, how much do you think the city spent on that park over there? And I said, I don't know, $250,000. And he goes, that was the best money we ever spent. Or another curmudgeon, he goes, I go to the door and he says, what do you want? I said, well, our neighborhood is doing a neighborliness initiative, and I just wondered if you know about it. Come on in. I go in and sit at the table, and we have tea for an hour because he was just wanting to visit. Like, very few people are actually, push back hard. I think their dogs may be the biggest. Dogs might have the biggest sense of creating discomfort, i.e., you knock on the door or come to the yard and the dog goes nuts, and then that person feels uncomfortable, and you're trying to connect, and but that's I think the greatest discomfort. Most people, when you're there, I don't find them very complainy generally.
No, I didn't either, really. People were pretty positive. Sometimes people were concerned, how are you going to use this data? Where's my information going to go, and this kind of thing. And that was a bit of a challenge, actually.
Yeah, good point.
Well, if you just say it's anonymized, does that help?
It did help. And it also, I think the term that Howard uses is that the information is guarded. And like when I did these cards, I always asked, do you mind if we share your email and phone number with your block neighbors?
Yeah, we don't usually say anonymous, but we say it's for the neighborhood. And, if somebody says they love dog walking, for example, would it be okay if we connected you? Would you like to be connected with some other dog walkers in the neighborhood, or bridge players? Or in Laurier, we had, who knew, 9 people who like smoking cigars. So we have a cigar perf. And when you're saying this is for the neighborhood and for you, And for your kids, like they might say, well, I'm looking for a group for 13-year-olds. Then they seem to be very open and willing, knowing the context of how it's being used. So I'm just keeping it as a block connector, as Penny said, especially in COVID now. It's nice to have contact info with those around you in case there's an emergency. And people, I've had one neighbor on my block who said, no, you can have the info, but I don't want it communicated with anybody else.
Well, and just to tell a little story, I have a block connector who had a guy say, there's no way I need to go and be friends with my neighbors. I've got my own friends. I don't need this at all. Thank you very much. And who was the first person to show up to the block social? She had coffee and tea and cookies, and that guy was the first one to show up. And then and conversely, the person who said, oh, I'll be at your party for sure, I'll be there, see ya, never showed up. So you just never know. And then just skipping over to something that Howard always does is Sam, sorry, that was Belgravia's neighborhood connector just passing by. Anyway, sorry about that. Howard always says that in COVID times, the best thing to do is to go around and say that you would like to get contact information for your block, to update your contact information. And even if you don't have any contact information, the belief is that you do, or that you should have it. So I like that for COVID a lot. And we did that, like we're in year 2 of Abundant Community. So we did that. We're doing that a lot in our neighborhood, is just updating information. That is an excuse for a conversation with neighbors too. So.
Well, I'm seeing that we are a couple minutes past 4 now, so I don't want to hold you any longer. I think it's possible that this conversation might be raising more questions for some of you on the call, and I know some of us are ready to go or have already started doing some block connecting, and I think we do want to create our own sort of community of practice around this. So certainly locally, we want to keep talking, and we would love to talk to Howard and Penny and Karen every week and keep learning from them. But I think we'll start talking with one another, and they've been very generous with their time. And I'm sure if we develop some focused questions moving forward, I'm sure we can ask those questions of them. If anything comes up for you right away, you could send a question my way. I could compile some things. But I will be really interested to know sort of who is interested in sort of moving forward with trying this block connecting model that people in Edmonton have done so well with. I'm really grateful to them and to all of you for being a part of this call today.
Our pleasure, for sure. Nice to be together with you. Birds of a feather, you know, from across the border. So it's great to be together.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yep.
And it doesn't surprise me at all that this happened in Canada.
I know. Right. I know.
Well, good luck to all of you, and I'm certainly open for, discussions or questions. So
thank you.
For what I can offer. I mean, it's just my own experience here, but there's lots of experiences from lots of city neighborhood connectors here in Edmonton who have who've done a lot of hard work and have a lot to offer too.
Right.
I'll just, ditto all of that. And your last comment, Michael, one of the founding principles of this movement is, inclusivity. Everyone's included. You live on the block. And so some of there's so much diversity on blocks in Canada now, in neighborhoods, and just coming alongside one another and recognizing our common ground, we're neighbors, has been hugely significant. especially for ethnic minorities, people with mental and developmental disabilities or abilities and so on. I find it very helpful in that way too, speaking to some people in an American context.
Yeah, and I just want to say, in my neighborhood, we need to get through this election because we're having a war of political signs. And I feel like if there's like Biden, Trump, and then someone puts up 2 more, and then someone else puts up 2 more, and I feel like if our neighborhood was more connected, that feeling of hostility when you drive into the neighborhood might be minimized.
Absolutely, Beth. And you know, we come to a place where we're willing to say, well, I see things differently, but we're still neighbors, and we're still gonna, you know, have a glass of wine together and hang out. But that's a very different posture. And I think it
exactly.
Yeah.
May it be so. My God. Yeah.
May it be so. May we just get through this.
Yeah.
Julie. Yes, John.
Could I ask
go ahead.
I know that, and I watched the video from the previous call. So when Howard was asked the question about what does it cost to get this going, he said about $500,000. And I was like, there's no way that our cities are going to be able to come up with this money. There's no way that we're going to be able to get that official city sanction, especially right off the bat. And I understand the importance that was demonstrated or attached to the sort of official designation of the city in terms of the connector cards. So, and I know this is asking something that is not your experience, but are there any ideas you have about what do we do in lieu of having that municipal support and official sanction that we can still be as effective without that city sanction, and just being, this is just our neighbors coming together and doing this. And then another kind of complicating part of it is, my experience is, and my understanding is, Canadians are a lot more trusting of government and Americans are a lot less trusting of government. So that's something that is also part of the equation. I'd just like to get any thoughts that you have on that issue.
I just want to mention, I think that we are recognized by the city of Appleton through our programs and our associations. So we could probably include Appleton as, you know, as part of our association with Appleton. We can include them on our cards.
Fabulous. That would be, that's wonderful. And I think in terms of the financing, we've done the heavy lifting in terms of what costs money to produce, and you can take that, and so it's just printing costs for you. In terms of there's no real outlay of money that needs to happen to make this possible. So I just want to be clear that it doesn't take any kind of outlay of money. I think, as Patrick mentioned, having endorsement from your municipality is key, or very important at least. Agencies with their current mandates in the particular areas that they have, whether that's youth or seniors or job employment, those individuals, as good triangles in the ABCD framework, can also provide guidance as long as they lead from behind and recognize the value of seeing this as a neighborhood initiative. So I think everybody is positioned to make this happen, especially when you take this, like we did today. The basic unit of this is somebody on the block with an orientation toward neighboring, creating a neighborly vibe. That's doable for anybody without any money. And now how fast it goes, the scale of it, those are just other questions that we have to answer. But no, it's doable for everyone. I love it that Appleton's already, you know, giving you at least a semi thumbs up so you can use their logo.
And let's just say that before it existed officially in Edmonton, Howard and I and numerous others were doing it just like you are, without anything beyond our neighbors. So
definitely grassroots from the ground up.
Yeah.
And our region, Imagine Fox Cities, does have a shared vision for the area, and it has a belonging committee. So I can imagine I could imagine Fox Cities could be
the belonging committee.
Yeah, it's great.
Wow.
And
John, you
Appleton
wanted
issues
to
grants to
share something.
associations to do mailings, et cetera. We've already gotten money from the city to do large mailings. They've funded it. All you have to do is fill out the grant work, and the city will actually help you fill out the grant work so you get approved.
Oh, that's good. You know, I wasn't part of our community league structure for 30 years in this neighborhood where I live, and I did this job for 30 years in this neighborhood without any of that. So there was no funding. I mean, we were just neighbors who were watching out for each other, connecting, making sure everybody was okay, reaching out to those who weren't. And so this is definitely a bit more intentional in terms of, you know, making sure you go to every door and get this information and fan it out. But you don't have to have the structures in place to get started from outside sources, I don't believe.
Mm-hmm. John, you wanted to.
Yeah, well, I just, it's a wonderful discussion and a lot of really useful tips and good information. I do think that the idea of that much money is not anything that needs to be focused on this time. I think the reason that the city threw in was not at the beginning. It was because the work was done in communities by community people, and they were almost forced, in a sense, to see this change coming, and then they stepped in. But one of the things that makes me always feel how authentic this is that it was alive, well, and spreading before the money question became significant in any real way. And I think in Wisconsin, that's where we are. Two other things as I listened, I think Howard might have said this, but one of the most wonderful things, if you're dealing with people who are talking about issues, right, rather than interests or skills, right, is to say to them, as a community building device even, well, what do you think we could do about that? What do you think we could do about that? Yeah, we meaning you, me, and the other 18 people on the block, right? Never turn outside. Always act as though these are people who have power and authority together when they work together. The thing is, for people in Wisconsin, I've noticed in some places that this kind of an initiative tends to slow down, maybe even stop when the winter comes. Now, Wisconsin, you know, is a fairly cool state, but it's not terrible. And here, you should all know, who are in Wisconsin, that Edmonton is the most northerly big city in the world, And they're telling you what they're doing. And I hate to even think about how cold it is, how long in Edmonton, but they keep going. They don't let the winter overcome them. And I just mention that because winter is coming.
My first block social was a hot chocolate in the end of January, right on my front pad, right there. in the freezing cold.
Wonderful.
The last video featured the Tim Hortons setting up the coffees, and someone in it said, well, maybe we can meet when it's not -5.
Been wonderful.
-25.
Thanks so much for your help.
Thank you so much, all of you. It was really great to talk to all of you. We'll talk some more.